everybody. Welcome back to the news. John here, along with Josh, Dr. Mike, and Dave. Our last news before the time change this weekend, guys. What do you think about the time change?
Is that tonight?
That's next weekend.
The
30th. The 30th going into the 31st. So, Dr. Mike, fan of daylight savings. Oh, wait, does that mean we're starting daylight savings or finishing daylight savings?
We're finishing daylight savings. So summertime is the quote-unquote unnatural time. Wintertime is the one that's a little more lined up with the sun and everything.
So starting on this coming Sunday, it's going to be dark at like 5 or something like that. And
3:30, like at the end of December.
Yeah, exactly. Dave?
Do you remember the genuine panic, like when this time of year would come around and you'd have to set your alarm for work and remember like that, it was an hour earlier. And,
it's depressing.
At least your phone doesn't.
One of my least favorite times of the year, the goddamn time change.
Poland gets screwed a little bit by daylight savings because of where it is geographically positioned towards GMT or whatever. So Ireland gets kind of lucky with this because we get really late evenings.
Yeah.
I don't really know
See
much
also
about
Portugal, I think. Yeah.
Not here. It sucks completely, but this is how it is. Let's dive into some of the headlines from this week. Let's start with a little bit of Polish Hollywood in the news. Hollywoodzki. Famous, very famous actor in Poland, from Krakow, very much associated with the city of Krakow. Super famous. So famous, he did the voice of the donkey in Shrek. See, that's his fame level. Jerzy S.
He's not been around here to record a voiceover yet, so he can't be really famous.
Oh, that's
Father
true.
of Mr. Stur.
Yeah.
He's the Polish Eddie Murphy, basically.
His son is a famous actor named Maciek Stur, but this guy is named Jerzy S. in accordance with Polish privacy laws.
And as a major media organisation, we better be careful.
Exactly. A couple of days ago, he hit a motorcyclist. Thankfully, no serious injuries, but he was drunk behind the wheel. So drunk driving, causing an accident involving bodily harm. He's in some trouble. But it's just interesting because, for a few reasons. The way the incident has been handled, we'll get some information about that from Dr. Mike in a second. But it also reminds us of Poland's kind of silly privacy laws. The media is not allowed to name him completely because these are allegations for the moment, but everybody knows who he is. It would be like saying, former Pope John P. It's that level of silliness, guys. What do you make of Poland's privacy laws regarding?
Trying to imply that John P. would
never, by the way, he would never do anything wrong. Absolutely not.
No, actually, the privacy laws here are often used by the media to make people look worse because you don't actually have to cover up the name until the person is more or less formally accused. So there's a case or investigation against him. So just because somebody did something that might be then followed up by the police doesn't mean you have to all of a sudden block his name. But they'll still do that in the media a lot of the time just to make somebody sound more sinister. So right at the beginning, when we knew who had caused this accident,
usually S, you
could have still used his formal name because there wasn't like a formal investigation or like an actual accusation and him being sent to court. So he wasn't a defendant yet.
It's also ridiculous because if you follow this is all over social media. Every Polish media outlet has some kind of post about this, and they had a picture of the actor Jerzy S. and they have this tiny little black bar covering his eyes, which is enough to satisfy the law, I suppose, in protecting his identity. But it's just absurd. Everybody knows who he is, but we have to go through this theater, I guess, this charade that we're somehow preserving his identity. It's a joke.
Look, I'm equally as amused by all of this, but I can't help but think of, and I can only speak for the UK in this regard, but like when you get some kind of high-profile, usually male personality who faces accusations or allegations of, let's say, improper sexual behaviour, and it's like, they're named. It may not go to trial. It may go to trial and they're completely cleared or whatever. But that person is, blemished, shall we say, just by the, and there's this whole thing about instances of false accusations, and the accuser is allowed to remain anonymous.
Yeah.
And if it then kind of transpires that it was a false accusation, then there may be a separate
But what's
very
kind of
rarely.
funny here, though, Josh, I see what you mean, but what's kind of funny here is that, if it were an allegation of, I don't know, cheating on taxes or whatever, that's one thing. But there's no question that the guy hit the motorcyclist. There's no question he was drunk. There's no room for doubt. I mean, it's all but a formal and official now, but we still have to go through this theater.
I'm sure Mike would say the newspaper could use their editorial judgment and just run his name anyway and take the legal risk. But it does create this effect. We have very strict privacy and libel laws in Ireland as well. And it is just a fact that powerful people use them to control media narratives against themselves. We have a situation in Ireland where we've got, a party, if you could call them that, Sinn Féin, that are suing people left, right and centre for, talking about well-reported news items from the past, because they're afraid coming up to the next election their past could haunt them. Just as one example, our famous billionaire Dennis O'Brien, we better be quiet, we'll get to it.
Dr. Mike, there's another aspect to this.
Famous American billionaire, Elon
the aspect of how the news of this incident was treated in different kinds of media because of Jerzy Struer's being, let's say, outspoken on certain issues.
It's true, yes. TVN mentioned this, while TVP, the Polish kind of state-owned media, went to the town with this, because the truth is, Jerzy S, or is it Jot Stor, or whatever, one of those combinations. Yeah,
father of Maciek Struer.
He was very famous for going to all the protests, complaining and protesting against the Peace Party, the government. Generally, when it came to all the court-related changes or anything like that, he was very vocal, very public about that on the news all the time. So right now, when you turn on TVP, they're saying like famous actor in Poland known for protesting all these changes, and it will show him like at some protest screaming, just face blurred out. Voice.
So basically, he's associated with leftist causes.
Very much so, and they're having fun with this.
And TVN not so excited about covering this.
Not so much. And the thing is, it's true. He was driving with what's it called, a felony level of alcohol in his system.
0.7, I think.
0.7, exactly. Because 0.5 used to be a misdemeanor, but now it's always a felony. And he caused an accident. He claims that he actually didn't know that he hit somebody, because we're not talking about like a fender, just a front-on collision, but apparently he hit the motorcyclist's hand with the mirror of his car. So he didn't even notice. He just might have heard a banging sound. And the injuries that the motorcyclist, he didn't fall over, he didn't break his spine. Apparently he, bruised hand, something like that. So I'm curious to see.
Give us an idea of where 0.7 is on, is that properly drunk or what?
That really depends on your tolerance. That if you caught a 19-year-old with that kind of blood alcohol level, then he would be, falling over, stumbling, talking. But if we're talking to somebody who drinks regularly, once a weekend,
pros like us, Mikey,
might be a little, inconsistent.
Barely bothered.
Well, I'm a little bit more than barely bothered, but yes. But this person could get away with being sober during short conversations. He wouldn't have an issue. He wouldn't feel problematic the next day.
Certainly from a legal perspective, it's definitely drunk enough.
Definitely drunk.
Aren't we missing the wider kind of societal implications about this whole story? I mean, fucking Shrek 5 is due out next year, lads. Who's going to play Donkey, man?
I think
Chris going to pay him enough to learn Polish. That ain't happening.
I think maybe
hilarious. Sorry, that would be fantastic.
Maybe it's possible to record voiceovers in prison.
Let's move on from Jerzy S., father of Maciek Struer. Let's talk about where should we go? Let's go to the airport. News out this week. Kind of a really attention-grabbing headline. We hope that the chances of it actually happening are rather low, but if it did happen, it would be a really big deal. Krakow Airport desperately needs another runway, and the process of getting permission from this runway is quite complicated for various reasons, but we learned this week that the issue might be somehow forced, and while this new runway is being built, Dr. Mike, it would necessitate the closing down of the airport. The airport couldn't function and build the runway at the same time. What's going on here?
Well, the problem right now is that the proposed site or location of the new runway, which would actually replace the old runway, has been protested by locals living there. There was an environmental impact report that, it needs to be conducted in order for the green light to go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick sidebar, Dave,
Mm-hmm.
How many times have we talked about the people who live close to the airport and then bitch and complain about everything the airport does?
Yeah, give me a break.
It's irritating.
Yeah, did you not notice all those aeroplanes? I mean, particularly with a second runway, it changes the flight paths coming in, but you still, have to be pretty close to the airport to be effective.
Yeah, there was a reason why that house was kind of cheap when you bought it. But anyway, okay, sidebar over.
But
Dr.
they
Mike.
protested against the decision that permitted the construction of the new runway. Based on some technical issues with the environmental impact report, court said, okay, whatever. The appeal went through, and
I want to see that ruling. The court has decided, okay, comma, whatever. Cool. Red stamp.
Legally blonde 3, yeah.
But nothing burger.
No, but there has to be a new environmental impact report.
It's like adjourned, man.
Especially...
OMG, the court is in session. LOL.
Can we have some chill in court, man?
All right. Sorry.
What were we talking about?
There was also an issue with the fact that the spouse of the institute in Krakow that is involved with the environmental impact report actually owned land around the airport.
Yeah, there was some conflict of interest involved.
So yeah, that could
well.
impact the sales or of that land. So they have to do a new impact report study, which will take several months at least. And the problem is that might delay the construction of the new runway while the old runway is falling apart.
Yeah, remind us why the current runway is insufficient.
It's too short. It doesn't have the modern electronic radar system that allows planes to land during
In
bad
the fog,
yeah.
which is a major
big
issue
deal
here
in Krakow.
in the winter,
the
yeah.
decision.
Come on, Sully fucking parked it on the river. You know what I mean?
But it was a sunny day.
We've never had a problem.
Flying out, that's easier than landing. That's the problem. So this new runway would have all the new technology that would allow for instrument landing. But the old one, besides not having those modern systems, is literally falling apart.
But doesn't it sound like of all the upgrades the airport has been given over the last 10 years or so, the number of gates, much nicer place, it seems like they've neglected the other part. The runway is the same as 1983, whereas the physical airport, where the gates are, is a world away from what it was a decade ago.
They talked about changing the runway more than 15 years ago, and it legally all started about 7 years ago. So, unfortunately, it's the bureaucracy, it's the red tape that is really.
Can you imagine a situation where they had to close the Krakow airport for 6 months? I mean, what?
Come to think
it's
of it,
not going to
a
happen.
lot of hard landings on Krakow airport tarmac, and that all tallies with what you've just said. But look, it'd be great to see a second runway, second terminal. Krakow's the type of city that could definitely use it. These type of large infrastructure projects, they tend to happen. If there's a need for a second airport, it's the type of thing politicians get their name behind.
It's weird also because, pretty much all the jets that are kind of flying in and out of Belica, and indeed anywhere in Europe these days, are either 737s or whatever the Airbus equivalent is. And they're 30%, they make 30% less noise than any of the sort of major jets from sort of 20, 30 years ago. The engines are more economical and they're quieter. So, I grew up close to an RAF base, which was kind of a logistics base. So that it was mainly big, transport aircraft and sort of VC-10s and Tridents and Hercules. And good God. The noise was just constant.
Gosh, please tell me you weren't one of those air watcher guys.
Well, you didn't really have a choice because there were planes constantly overhead.
I'm a bit of a Navy geek, but...
what was it like during the war?
Which one?
The victim, David McGee.
Mike, is this a runway supposed to be ready for a generation of planes that doesn't exist yet? Like bigger, heavier planes that...
No, it's...
unicorn-winged planes.
No, it will basically be ready for anything that is right now out there. It's
Air Force One wants to land every day.
Yes, it's going to be 2,800 meters long, so it's long enough for Air Force One to land and take off without an issue.
Class A380, the super airliner, as it were, is dead, John. They're not making them anymore.
Exactly. I thought the trend was towards the 737 size, the medium point-to-point.
Well, that 737 is, it's a small narrow body. The point-to-point kind of, we're thinking Dreamliner, so that's still wide body already. And those are the larger planes. There is talk about Boeing introducing a new kind of medium-sized plane. but we're not sure if that's going to happen. Now we're replacing the 757, 767.
I've never flown on a Dreamliner or an A380. But oh my god, I'd love to. And anyone you speak to is. Have you been on one?
Yeah.
I mean, people really gush about the experience. Nice. Like, I mean, it's the pinnacle of human engineering. You can't not notice that
things are different. That it's more room and everything just nicer and just a fantastic
it's true,
experience.
And it's not only for passengers the experience is better. I knew two girls that actually worked on Emirates, two Polish girls, and they told me the same thing with the A380. It's just like the layout, the size. It's even though there's 500 people on there, it's just easier to handle.
World of difference, yes.
Apparently, there was a bit of hubris in the development because they could have really made it a lot more efficient if they'd have really tried to work on the engines. But that was the peak of the airline industry, kind of the early 90s, and gas prices had never been lower. And believe it or not,
still hub and spoke as the main.
Well, actually, one of the things that they didn't really think about, and has actually been one of the main kind of instruments in the 380's downfall, is the fact that, it holds 500 odd people in, very comfortable conditions. But prior to taking off and just after landing, you've got to get those 500 people on and off the plane. And you have one door at the front and one door at the back. And guess what? We've all flown Ryanair when there's 140 odd people getting into a little...
Yeah, good point.
Airbus, one door at the front, one door at the back. And that's a pain in the ass.
It's a quick turnover philosophy.
And yeah, Josh... Punters absolutely love it. And what does that tell you, right? I mean,
loved it, yeah.
Boeing, especially if you turn left when you get on the plane.
Boeing did something very clever with the second generation of what's their large? The 787 MAX, isn't it? The biggest plane they make.
Well, right now it's a 777.
Excuse me, whatever. I'm not great on it. It is a bit confusing, all the sevens and all that. But they won the game on pure cold hard economics. All right, and long term, the airline industry it's lost so much of its luster. It used to be one of those romantic pinnacle of human achievement type of industries, and now it's just a bus in the fucking sky, and it makes people sad. You know what I mean? No Concorde, no. All right, there will be A380s for ages because there's lots of them out there, but you know what I mean, John? You nostalgic about
bus in the sky? Oh, for sure, that's exactly what it is. Dr. Mike, one more thing on the airport. Shouldn't overlook it. The fact that Belica also has some military significance as well.
It's a NATO base. So,
it's a NATO base, and given the situation in Ukraine, etc.,
it's a target. It's one of those first line targets right away. So if things go nuclear, Krakow's gone.
Oh, that's nice to know.
And especially considering how often the Russians are good about hitting the targets they want. So they won't hit the airport; they'll hit the city because take kilometers. Close enough.
And we're closer to Russia from this side of the airport, so they're likely to hit us.
You're making Romania nervous.
Let's move on to something else. A report this week shows that Poland is not only near the top, it's at the top, at the very, very top of countries that have transitioned away from a cash economy towards, what do you call it? The tap and pay, whatever you want to call it. Just 29% of people report regularly using cash to pay in stores. If my math is correct, that leaves 71% people mostly using credit cards, debit cards.
Well, some people might be paying in barter or some other kind of
stone discs and things
Camels.
like that. But yeah, we talked about this before. I didn't notice how common it is here until I went to Florida some time ago and realized how it wasn't as common. It kind of blew my mind that Poland seems to be ahead of the field. Dave, same in Ireland.
I've got to say something here, right? Because sometimes I think when we discuss previous episodes of the KrakCast, I have a much clearer memory of what we have and haven't discussed in the past. And I got to give us a bit of credit here. We were always saying that Poland has to shake out that they're one of the biggest adopters of this in the world. Everyone taps and pays here. It's nearly always the phone, and it has been for a long time.
Don't carry my card with me for years or cash. If there's a place that doesn't allow me to pay with contactless payments, I will most likely not go there again. I remember, 10 years ago when cards were becoming more popular here, there were still those places that wouldn't take a card, or they wouldn't take a card if you wouldn't pay with, say, at least 20 or 30 zlotys. They disappeared, and then contactless payment just exploded. John, I think it's funny because I remember we had an episode a few years ago where you were complaining about people paying with cards in Zapka. And this is the time you put the card in. There's
I was complaining when they were paying for 89 grosha with a card.
It wasn't about that. It was just the fact that sometimes it would take longer if the connection wasn't good.
Yeah.
But right now it's the other way around. Somebody pays with cash. You're like, oh god.
Yeah, exactly. What is this? 2016? Yeah. Exactly. Just pay with a card, and move on, or your phone.
I got a little story about that. Actually, I was off last Monday. My parents were over. Hi, Mom. And I was in H&M, actually, was just picking up a pair of sweatpants, which I'm wearing right now, actually. Do you like them?
Oh, they're very svelte, yes.
And this lady was making her returns. Now, the shop was quiet. It was a Monday afternoon, so I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. She was expecting it to be dead, whatever. But, I was going into the changing room to carry them on. She was already at the till. There was no one else there. When I got back, she was still there negotiating, because all cash transactions in Poland must take as long as signing a mortgage. It seems to be a legal rule, whether you're in an apteka. Why are aptekas so slow? So slow. Why does everyone skip the queue? Because they have a question. I don't know. Okay, but what was I talking about?
Something about H&M and sweatpants.
Yeah, and she was paying the difference between her returns and what she was buying in cash, and oh my God, it was like $38.99, and she was counting it out in pennies and ones and twos. I mean, it was like 5 minutes. There was 8 people in the queue all of a sudden. There was someone running from the other side of the store to relieve the pressure on, us customers. But yeah, good story, Dave.
It was a good story. Thanks, Dave. Where were we on this? How common it is to pay with cards. I guess you can't really get a good feel for comparing unless you spend a lot of time outside of the country. Dave, you're in Ireland often enough. How would you compare Irish habits when it comes to tap and pay?
I see more cash transactions, especially in bars and pubs and restaurants in Ireland. There's still a lot of people would bring their pocket full of cash. So there is that thing.
But the trend is towards the Polish reality now, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can tap and pay anywhere in Ireland, pretty much.
And I'll be honest, I would have thought
more and more every time I go home.
I would assume that at a bar they would prefer the tap and pay because it just makes things faster, simpler.
Yeah, but an old wise man will tell you, you bring to the pub what you want to spend, all right? Because that stops you getting totally shit faced, waking up in a bush the next day.
Maybe some other old men would advise you against cards because it also makes everything official. Creates a record.
That's a completely different issue. It's like if there's talk about like allowing stores to not accept cash whatsoever. No, I don't agree with that because cash is the baseline of legal tender. That's how you should be able to pay. Nobody should ask questions. And when I hear about the laws, there's already laws in Europe that basically say that you can't pay for anything. I think with over 20,000 euros or something like that.
Are you okay with a place that doesn't accept cards but insists on cash? Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that. The other way around, and that's a little dodgy.
No cash, all cards.
As long as you've got shitloads of change. There's a little Asian noodle shop in Galeria Krakowska, Asia Hung. Does a nice box 5, crispy chicken. Bit of spicy sauce, fills the gap, $16.90. It's been consistently well priced, good for tasty food. He takes cash only, but he's always got a tray full of coins and cash ready to go. Never have a problem, ever. You get your change straight away. Vietnamese, not Polish, just saying.
I wonder if that will withstand some kind of legal challenge, refusing to take cards.
Of course.
No, it did, because in Poland, cards are considered a legal type of payment. So if you open a store...
You have to take them.
You have to. If you have the machine, you have to take it.
But if you don't have the machine, I insist you get the machine.
No, you don't. They can assist. But if you have a machine, there was a time when we won't take cards for the small purchase because the card companies, the vendors...
You're going to get my guy in trouble, all right? Those incredible noodles I don't want to hear of.
Okay, there was, they were saying it's 1.5% of the transaction. So you buy gum... And besides a minimum fee, the store actually pays a percentage as well. So it just didn't make sense for them financially to allow you to buy something cheap with a credit card or a debit card. But the law doesn't allow that, so that's why it disappeared. You might have remembered 10 years ago.
In this day and age, it looks shady not to take credit card. Let's be honest.
It does. Have you guys been in the situation where, because like Dr. Mike says, it's about cash. It's about having a card or just paying with your phone all the time. Have you been in a situation where you've been unable to give somebody a tip because you have no cash?
Yes.
Yeah.
Delivery guys, restaurants,
obviously,
taxis,
in a
maybe.
A restaurant, they put it on the card, and on the tip, the apps now, you can add a tip if you like. So, no excuse for the fact that I haven't a few times.
Although I think in some places, waiting staff don't like the tip on the card. Because
it's official, yeah.
They have a different way of dividing up the tips,
I prefer to tip in cash whenever possible. I have a little change drawer at home, especially for deliveries. But I'm just being honest here. Once or twice I've dipped in there, and there's been nothing there. What can you do?
But do you tip the delivery driver if you're even using, say, an app where you use the option to tip them as well?
Yeah, man, it's a shit job. You know what I mean? They're driving a bicycle around the place.
But I'm saying, in the app, you've said, okay, I'll give this guy, 10% of just 5%.
I'm not going to tip him on the app and tip him on cash. As long as my little drawer is well supplied. Ironically, it all links together. It's like a Tarantino movie, because when I pay for me noodles with cash, it creates a trees like 10 surplus in my pocket every day, because so I throw that into the drawer when I get home every day, so it's not spilling all over the bedroom floor. And if I'm on a 4-box week, that's like 12 zloty 90. I only get one takeaway a week. I'll usually tip about 8 zloty, depending roughly what I'm ordering.
Still, I gotta think that your pizza delivery guys and your guys on the bikes are getting stiffed more often than they should, because people just don't remember that they don't have cash on hand when the guy shows up at the door.
Honestly, mate, delivery drivers, they deserve a tip. It's only happened a few times. I'm not proud of it, but, just trying to be honest,
Yeah, they definitely deserve a tip.
As
for
a
sure.
policy, I tip. And especially in restaurants, and I try and always give it in cash. But they have a new thing now called Tip-Ippy. And, so it's an app, and they give you their tip.
Everything has to have a cutesy name, though.
Right, so what happens is the waitress gives you a card, and it's a personal Tip-Ippy card, and you scan it with your camera. It leads you to the usual bank payment process, and you can tip that way. So it's separate to the restaurant's payments.
Still
anyone else amused by the thing that you see in quite a few bars around where it's a jar for tips, and obviously not being aware that tips is already a plural, so the Polish kind of like pluralizes tips into tipsy.
Yeah, feeling tipsy. Give us a tipsy,
which is kind of apposite.
Let's move from cashless to talentless. Here's a story about, this is absolutely true.
Watching Polish music shows.
Not making this up. Just a quick reminder, Krakow next year, 2023, is going to host the European Olympics after setting the sporting world on fire in its previous editions in Baku, Azerbaijan, and Minsk, Belarus.
We've probably done more to publicise this pathetic excuse for a sporting event than...
Very possible. Event is coming to Krakow. Got two quick stories related to that. First, this week we saw, I still have trouble believing this. I need some confirmation, but it seems to be true. The mascot for the games. Every game has to have a mascot, like the Olympics always has a mascot for marketing purposes. The mascot has been chosen, Dr. Mike. The mascot looks like it was, I don't want to be too rude here, but how can I say this without being horribly offensive? It's not the best mascot I've ever seen, not the best execution, not the best concept. Take it away.
Come on, it was drawn by a 15-year-old kid.
That's why I can't be too mean about it, yeah.
It's like kind of a generic little cartoon.
Really?
Yeah. Cartoon dragon with a Cracovia hat on and something like Olympics 2023.
Dave, you're looking at it there on the laptop.
Yeah,
what do you
when you
think?
said kid, I was looking at this.
Thinking like a 5-year-old kid. Exactly.
No offense, whoever you are, 15-year-old Katarzyna Vista.
Come on.
Maybe there's some kind of avant-garde thing going on here that we don't get,
Please tell me this is not the final version.
Anyway, it's a dragon. We're in Krakow. Makes sense to me. Good choice, Kasha.
Too obvious.
Yeah.
Oh, too obvious.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going against the actual concept as well.
Yeah, I don't like the concept either. But Mike, please tell me this is not going to be on T-shirts and billboards and coffee cups and trinkets. And
it looks
whatever.
like early concept art for the front of a children's spelling book.
Yeah, that
From
was
the
rejected
80s,
for being too shitty. But all right, see, I said I wouldn't be mean, but okay.
Yeah, this will be on what's it called? Olympic.
Well, look, I think this is the idea, but it'll get kind of the rough edges polished off by some professional graphic artist.
I'm hoping like a major upgrade. Somebody who's professional will step in and say, "Okay, I see where you want to go here. Let me help you out. And
let
let's
me make this
it look better."
good. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
It would just like erase all the bad.
The other item connected with the European Olympics coming to Krakow next year,
exciting.
A lot of the local existing facilities will host different events. Like for example, the AGH. No, sorry, not AGH. AWF. AWF, the sporting university, they're going to host quite a few events at their facilities there. I think both the Cracovia Stadium, Mike, and the Wisla Stadium. Wisla Stadium for sure, because we're going to talk about it in just a moment. Maybe Cracovia as well. Anyway, the idea is to upgrade current facilities to avoid having to build new facilities. Wisla Stadium is meant to be one of the primary hosts for various events because of its size and location. But once again, it needs upgrades, which is something that we hear constantly. The stadiums cost, $600 million to build, and I think another $300 or $400 million has been poured into it since then.
Plus $30 million a year just to keep the lights on.
Just to keep the lights on. But now we understand that the stadium needs more upgrades, but no contractors can be found to make these things happen and to actually do the work.
Because they want to get paid.
Because they want to get paid. Yeah, that's one
this
thing.
is the third round of attempts. This last week, the city sat down, with the envelopes, whatever, to see what the new bids were. They opened up. Nobody was bidding. Nobody wanted to get involved with the city to upgrade the facilities. And it's not really that complicated. It was about like the outside facade and some of the internal like infrastructure installations, like wiring and piping and stuff like that. The deal was for about 77 million zlotys, so still a lot of money, but apparently no company thought they would make any money off of this, especially since they would have to do.
It's politically toxic.
You got 6 months as well to do this.
It's kind of interesting, just as a little sort of side note here. A couple of weeks ago, there was an international match staged here in Krakow, which was Ukraine against Scotland. And there was...
You can hear them all over the place.
Yes, there was lots of men in skirts parading around. And they didn't play in the Wisla Stadium, they played in the Krakow Stadium.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to see the best mascot ever for any games, in my opinion, right? This is from Italia 90.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that was absolutely top.
Chow. And my uncle used to have like a soft toy kind of little statue of it on top of the TV in my granddad's house, and I always loved it. And I think it's a very unique piece of symbology.
Yeah.
One more thing before we finish up, the return of the IMAX theater coming soon. As you know, if you're a fan of IMAX, it's been missing from Krakow for about a year and a half now, something, maybe 2 years. Ever since the Cinema City closed down in Galeria Plaza / Plaza Galeria, whatever the hell it was called. Although there are other Cinema City locations here. What do we have? Galeria Kazimierz, Zakopianka, and is it just those two?
Well, there's also Multikino out on
Well, that's Multikino, but Cinema City has the two locations. Anyway, Cinema City announced this week that the IMAX will be returning to the Zakopianka location. They're in the process of getting it ready now. But, Dr. Mike, this is not the IMAX that we knew before.
Yes, I'm not sure, but I believe the IMAX at Krakowia Plaza was about 18 meters tall. It was the tallest one in Poland. They would often introduce
proper IMAX. Yeah.
The movie. You'd go there for the opening weekend of a movie, and some girl would walk out and says like, "Welcome to IMAX." The visual, wonderful experience. You're watching this on the largest screen, which is about, I think they said 4 stories tall.
Right.
So that makes sense. About 18 meters, and part of IMAX, not only the quality of the projectors and the quality of the actual film stock, but the screen size was also a big deal. The one being opened on Zakopianka, 9.5 meters tall. So about half the height, if what I'm reading is true.
Not really.
It's not the same thing. 9.5 meters, that's a big screen, but that's not that big of a deal.
It's more iMedium.
Yeah. I think the one at Kino Kyiv is about that tall.
Actually, you're right. That is a huge screen they have there. I saw The Matrix there. I saw Pulp Fiction there, actually.
That is a great cinema.
It's so bad.
But that's not good.
Oh, it's not. Don't even. It's just.
Are you talking about the original or the new one?
The original.
The new one. I went to see the 4th on New Year's Day. I got COVID afterwards. I think
no coincidence.
It's so bad it gave me COVID.
So the new IMAX on Zakopianka, it's there in name, but unfortunately the experience probably not what it used to be when it was at Galeria Plaza / Plaza whatever.
Because they're not building a new wing or a new structure for it. They just repurposed one of the larger screens there and switched it apparently over to IMAX.
Can you blame them though? Would you invest lots of money on building a new IMAX these days?
Just for Avatar 2.
Yeah. I mean, people don't go to the movies like they did before. Very few titles worthy of the IMAX experience.
Well,
why would you invest big money?
Bonarka is pretty cool as well. I mean, I don't know what, Maxi it is.
Oh, sorry. Of course, Bonarka. That's their third location. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kazimierz, Bonarka, and Zakopianka.
But their number one theater is pretty
it's
impressive.
nice, yeah.
There's one in Dublin on O'Connell Street. I want to say it's called the Savoy, maybe. And I had the curtains and everything. I'll never forget watching the Lord of the Rings, the last part there. I mean, just enormous.
Mega, huh?
Huge.
I went to the original one in London up round by Waterloo and saw, actually it was epic. It was the guy who accompanied Ernest Shackleton on his doomed trip to the South Pole in 1912. And he
Dan Snow's been digging that up for the last...
filmed the whole thing. And I tell you, seeing actual footage from 1912 of these brave bastards.
They found a ship recently.
If you don't know the story of the Endurance and Shackleton's kind of, like, not a single person lost their life. Absolutely extraordinary.
What the fuck they were doing there in the first place is the real question.
Well, that's another story.
That's the kind of, even if the documentary is good, I'm sure it was very good. That's the kind of thing that IMAX that's their default. When there's no Star Wars, when there's no Avatar, when there's no Matrix, they default to the National Geographic type, trip through the jungle, whatever. Maybe some gimmicky 3D stuff.
The thing that was good was it was barely even a documentary. It was literally the film that this guy had shot. So it was like, a 100-year-old film at that time.
The first IMAXs were usually in museums or planetariums. They were huge, though. They were talking more, not, like here, 9 meters, 18 meters. I think the largest IMAX is about 36 meters tall.
God damn.
The film stock they used was not 35 millimeter like most movies, but 65, 70 millimeter. And they would also film it horizontally, so it's a taller screen. If they converted the actual film stock to high-res digital film, it shouldn't be 4K. It should be closer to 12K. It's just a completely different experience, but, you don't have too many screens like that. The wonderful, large ones.
You've just jogged the memory for me. Where's that place in London that has, is it like Piccadilly Circus, has a huge cinema, IMAX type arrangement?
Well, the only one that I remember is close to Waterloo Bridge.
Leicester Square.
I think Leicester Square is just your standard big cinemas. I don't know. I mean, it's like I've not been to a cinema in London.
The biggest cinema I've ever done was in
Dave, I think in Dublin, in London, it makes financial sense. The market is there. The millions of people. Krakow is just too small to justify a major investment for a proper IMAX. We're too small.
The reason I like Galeria Casimir's cinema is right beside my house, and it's always empty. And I don't know how that works as an economic model, but it's.
Yeah, when was the last time you went to a packed? Like a premiere, but any kind
here
of
in
showing.
Poland, maybe it's like we're talking like Lord of the Rings, Avatar at times. When you had those big movies coming out, opening weekends. If I go to a cinema here, even on an opening weekend, and there's more than 1/3 of the a theater is full, I'm shocked.
Doesn't happen anymore.
We were pretty early in the run for Top Gun Maverick. That's the last one we went to see, and it was empty as usual.
Yeah, exactly. It was maybe a quarter full, if or less than that. But
I'll be honest, when you're talking about like who goes to cinemas here in IMAX, I think they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot here, because right now people are building their own home theater systems. A good 4K TV and sound system is comparable to a cinema. IMAX is the thing that makes it better.
60-inch, 70-inch. It's not really. I still
77.
Big dogs, you get a new TV?
Yeah.
77.
Wife got me my 40th birthday present. Yeah, I really have to try hard now.
Completely emasculated. 60-inch. It's pretty cool.
Barely see it. Walk in the room, you can miss it if you don't know it's there.
It's a cold day.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of the news. Make sure you catch our episode later this week about ketchup.
Better not be a fucking OLED.
You can find out on your own what that's all about. KrakCast.pl is the site. Check out all of our back episodes there. And on behalf of, what's your name, Dave, Dr. Mike, and Josh, this is John C. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.